Melanie, how are you? You're not stuck at work, are you? Oh, thank you for the roses. It's awesome that you're able to join. I'm going live earlier than normal because I've decided to make a final concerted effort to try and get my house done. And so, from the time I woke up until just now, I've been working on the bedroom trying to get it done, and I'm exhausted. And I know if I don't go live now, it won't happen. So I'm going live now. I'm just still sick. Good grief. We will have to hold a group prayer for you tonight. Don't let me forget that. Okay. I'm going to have to look at my comment settings real quick. Bear with me, guys. I've noticed the last few times I've went live, I don't know what in the world is going on, but it acts like it's trying to automatically filter half of my comments. Oh. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, I don't know what was going on the last couple of lives. It was blocking a lot of the comments from you guys. Thank you, Tweety. I really appreciate that. And it was ridiculous ones. And then Daisy found out that there was like 5 or 6 random words that had been added to the to be flagged in the comments, and they were really extremely common words like ask and the and stuff like that. So anytime there was a comment with that, it was automatically filtering out their comments. But I think I've got a handle on that now, so hopefully comments are no longer being filtered. Hello, Noel L. Leon, good to see you, my friend. Melanie, don't let me forget, before I get off of here, to hold a group prayer. Please remind me, because I might forget. In the world. Morgan, absolutely, don't let me forget. The way I like to do that is I like to jump right in and do the live the way that we normally do and get everybody, get the energy of the entire group together, and we all feed off of each other's energy, and then while we've got a lot of people in here, then do those things. I feel like that it's more effective that way, but don't let me forget, because I am terrible about that, and I definitely don't want to do that. Welcome in, Jody. It's good to see everybody. Okay, I'm going to try to make a note here. Hopefully it will remind me. Bear with me, guys. So I have, before we really get started and we go down 20 rabbit holes, as we usually do with the live, I wanted to run something by you guys and see what your thoughts are on it. And I'm not even 100% sure what this would look like yet, but I find the concept interesting. So you know how the last 2 lives, I've talked about this dream that I had, where I felt that the divine was speaking to me in my dreams, telling me about my calling, telling me that now was the time to do so, that I was being called to action and given my marching orders. I've been thinking an awful lot about that, and I don't know exactly what that looks like, other than I think it's definitely in alignment with what I'm doing now. It might need to be tweaked a little bit, but in that dream, I knew that I had to broadcast in front of millions, that I had to stand up and address all of these people, and that people were going to be staring at me, and I was going to be in the spotlight. But it felt like almost like a news thing. Like I was giving the news. Oh, thank you, Melanie. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Melanie. Goodness. It felt an awful lot like I was being called to deliver the news to the army. And I don't mean like the United States military. I mean like God's army. The awakened, or the awakening, or just God's people in general. And so I'm wanting to try to start steering things in that direction. I'm not 100% sure what that even looks like. I definitely touch on some things that are of strong relevance to that. You know, we talk a lot about prophecy and the true teachings of Yeshua and Christ consciousness and the coming of the age of Aquarius and the new age and those sorts of things, and this grand solar cycle that we're in. But I really would like to consider tweaking my content to where it is focused on delivering the news to you beautiful people, and hopefully many others. Spiritual news, what's going on in the world spiritually, because there's more than enough people delivering the news of what's going on behind the scenes. You know, the fake news that we have with mass media, and then of course there's the other side of that tends to focus on the more negative aspects of everything. And I think all of that has a time and a place, right? But that's not for me. That's not what I need to do. But I think I want to begin having a news broadcast of sorts around spirituality, like, and for for God's people and the coming of the new age and the age of Aquarius. Let me know what you guys think about that. I'm still toying around with the idea. Again, I'm not 100% sure what that looks like. It will, if I do that, it will probably be separate from the Soul Group Live. It will be something that I would try to structure like a news broadcast that is every day at a certain time, every single day at that time. Just like whenever, you know, if you want to watch the news, you know what time it comes on. Been a long 2.5 weeks. Good grief, I can imagine. So we had a requested topic tonight to discuss spiritual clearing and healing. And so I want to start the live by talking about that tonight. Morgan says, ooh, I have chills. I felt the same recently. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Morgan. And please, I understand the hesitancy. Trust me. I really know what that's like. I don't know if you've heard me talking about my struggle with anxiety and panic and public speaking and all of that stuff. If you haven't, we should talk about those things. But just know, this was not always the case. I used to have a debilitating fear of public speaking, being in the spotlight, and all of those things. I'm convinced I was born with anxiety. From a very early age, I had a really severe anxiety disorder. But I've learned a lot of tricks, a lot of tools in my toolkit to help overcome those things. Noel says that sounds like a fantastic idea. Especially if you feel called to do it. Thank you guys for that feedback. I really appreciate it. Jody says, love that idea. You're just the one to do it. Well, thank you so much. Welcome, Beth. How are you? Morgan, let's do that. Let's do that tonight. We have more than enough time to cover that. Thank you, Honeybee, and welcome in, my friend. So, let's talk first. Let's start this off. We'll talk about spiritual clearing and healing. And then, don't let me forget, we'll start talking about anxiety and ways that you can overcome those things, because I think it's incredibly important. And I firmly believe every single human being has anxiety at some point in their life. Not every single human being struggles with anxiety disorder, but a large percentage of at least American adults do. So, very important to talk about those things. Thank you so much, Noel Elion. I appreciate you. Okay, so give me a second. I had to take a screenshot for my smile file. Okay. Spiritual clearing. There is, where do we even start with that topic? I think it's really important on this topic. By the way, I was specifically asked to discuss this. So, I would start that off based on the reason behind that. It's really important to understand or start with a working understanding of why you feel that is necessary. There's usually a reason. There's usually a root cause. Is it something that has to do with energetic blockages within the chakras? Is it something that you feel something negative has attached to your energetic body? Are you surrounded by overly negative people? Is your environment hostile, and it's lowering your energy, and things are attacking you and or attaching to you? I think depending upon the situation, that's where I would address the bulk of my efforts to try and yes to all. Okay. So let me find a good starting place, because this is an important topic. And I think, again, as with anxiety, all of us will experience this to some degree along our path, especially once you set out on the path of spiritual awakening. And I've used this analogy a lot. Whenever you experience a spiritual awakening and you begin walking the path, it is like walking out into a dark field, pitch black, and then switching on a very bright million candle power spotlight. It's going to attract stuff, right? Can you imagine the insects and everything swarming to it because it's light, right? You're going to get some attention to it. So just know that, especially within the spiritual community, you are more likely to attract attention to yourself that you might not necessarily desire to have, right? Okay, we're gonna mute that because this is not a spam group. I find myself cleansing mainly due to religious trauma. Okay, so let's start there, and then we'll work through the other stuff. With any type of trauma, it doesn't really matter what kind it is. The result can be the same to varying degrees. What causes it, what causes the blockages and the upsets to our energy field, is that we have an energetic body and we also have a physical body, and they are not necessarily separate, but they operate independently of one another, while one will affect the other. Thank you, Melanie. I appreciate that. Just got Sage and Palo Santo. Yes, Palo Santo is fantastic. Just a little side note, and then I'll continue. Palo Santo, is great because not only does it repel negative energy like white sage and many other things like sweetgrass and numerous other herbs, but Palo is almost unique in that it will repel negativity and attract positive energy at the same time. So it clears a space and then welcomes in the light, the positivity. So definitely good for that. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Okay. So whenever we experience trauma, we have an emotional reaction to it, just like everything else. If you were to go out and win the Mega Millions, you're going to have an emotional reaction to it. If you stub your toe, you're going to have an emotional reaction to it. If somebody throws out some passive aggressive comment, retort to a statement that you make, you're going to have an emotional reaction to it, right? That is the norm of the human condition. We have the ability to control, to an extent, our emotional state and our reaction to the outside stimulus. That's a completely different topic. But just know every single thing that happens to us elicits some form of emotional response. And I think it's important to understand that emotions are simply energy in motion. We are energetic beings. We are pure energy. So what that's saying is there is a reaction within our energy field caused by our response to an outside stimulus. There's a reason that I'm trying to go a little bit deeper with this, so it'll make sense here in a minute. Whenever we have an energetic reaction to something, especially, let's say, something powerful like a traumatic event, if that trauma, if that emotion is not properly expressed, not just expressed, but if it is not validated by yourself and fully realized and expressed to where the energy flows, then it is stored, dormant of sorts, within the body. Energy does not go away. It is not created or destroyed. It simply transforms. So what that means is you had a traumatic experience. Your energy field shifted. It moved as a result of that outside stimulus. And that part of ourselves, that portion of our energy through our emotions, if it's not properly exercised, we store it deep down within our subconscious minds oftentimes because it's uncomfortable, it's painful, so we don't want to deal with it, we don't want to handle it, so we repress it, we stuff it down, sweep it under the rug a little bit. But again, it does not go away. And that is a part of us. It is a part of you, right? So what happens is it will impact you, your body, your energy field, your emotional state, your mental state, every aspect of your life until it is properly brought into light and exercised appropriately. And then you can reclaim that part of yourself and transform it and call back that part of yourself. The reason that I'm telling you all of this is because we have the chakra system, which is really the connection point between our etheric light bodies and our physical body, the vessel that we occupy, our vehicle, the temple. It is the connection point that connects our spirit, our energetic body, into the physical so that we can navigate the world and interact with things in the third dimension, in the physical plane. Each single one of those chakras is a dimension of consciousness. It is a portal to a different dimension. Not metaphorically, literally, each chakra is a portal to a different dimension of consciousness. And so there is a correlation for each of the chakras with the full spectrum of emotional expression. So, depending on where that emotion is, it is going to primarily impact one or more of the chakras based on the frequency of the energy vibration. So, if you have, let's say, early on in your childhood, maybe 7 years old, and you experienced a traumatic event, maybe a massive split in your family, maybe your parents fought a lot, it got physical, and there was a separation and divorce, and then maybe one of your parents had left where you did not get to see them for long periods of time. That would very powerfully affect the root chakra, as well as actually the lower three. It could definitely impact because of the frequency of the energy that it is vibrating at, right? And during those early formative years, that's when those chakras are forming. And so something like that can retard your entire energetic and spiritual development if it is not addressed appropriately, because the way our energy unfurls, the way it evolves, is it begins with the root chakra, the foundation, and then each chakra, each dimensional portal is built upon the preceding one as a foundation. And they normally correspond with certain periods of our life and development. Whenever you have that traumatic event in this example, Brock, I've covered too much ground to back up, but I will make a video of this. I will take snippets of this and I will put it into a video because this is really important. Bear with me, Benita. I will get to that. Trust me. I just got to give the long-winded explanation. Thank you so much, Melanie. I appreciate that. Okay, so they build upon the preceding chakra as our consciousness evolves, because each chakra is a dimension. It is a portal to a dimension of consciousness that is on a completely different level than the other chakras. So with this example that we're talking about, with this traumatic experience somewhere around the age of 7, with the split of parents, let's say, you might not have had the proper emotional intelligence or proper role models to show you how to handle and process that emotional energy and express it appropriately, much less to be able to transmute that energy and call it back into yourself. So it stays dormant, trapped in the subconscious mind within the body, and it acts, because of the frequency, because of the harmonic resonance, it acts like a blockage in your root chakra. And so you might have an issue feeling stable. You might have an issue with stability. Let's say, jobs come and go for you. You might be a little bit of a wandering nomad. Anytime something good seems to happen for you, something intervenes. It's almost like you self-sabotage yourself without even realizing that you're doing it. The reason why is because the energy cannot flow easily between the root chakra and make its way up to the solar plexus, which is the representation of your personal power, your ability to make forward progress, to assert your will in this world. That stagnant energy from the trauma blocks the flow through your chakra, and it can manifest very physically in the body as well. Somebody who has this specific blockage that I'm talking about, it's very plausible it could manifest as sciatic nerve pain, because the root chakra is named the root chakra for a reason. Each one of the chakras also has a corresponding nerve ganglia where it is the connection point for that portal, for that spiraling vortex of energy. It connects through that nerve ganglia. And for the root chakra, it is your sciatic nerve, the root. If you look at human anatomy, you will notice that the sciatic nerve is the final main branch from your spinal column all the way down into the sole of your foot, where it contacts the earth like a root and physically grounds the system. So if you have an imbalance or blockage in the root chakra from this traumatic experience, if left untreated for a certain period of time, it can manifest as sciatic nerve pain, among many other things. Can you repeat the cause for that blockage? It's primarily an energetic flow. That's what all of the chakras are all about. The chakras are vortexes of energy. It's, you know what a vortex is, right? Think of a tornado. It is spiraling, spinning mass of energy. Each one of them has a push and a pull. It is taking in energy into itself and reflecting it back at the same time, and transmitting information through the sushumna up your spinal cord from one chakra to the next. If you have a traumatic experience and your emotional energy is not properly expressed, it is not properly handled or dealt with, the energy does not go away, because energy is not created or destroyed, it just transforms. So it stays in the chakra that is affected by virtue of vibration, whichever of the chakras is corresponding to the frequency vibration of that emotional energy. It will stay in that chakra, in the body, and block the flow of energy between chakras. And then it can manifest as all sorts of things. Thank you, Morgan. I appreciate that. So, you're most welcome, Noel. The reason I'm telling you all of this, I just spoke for like 20 minutes explaining the mechanics of our etheric bodies, the connection points of the chakras, and how that relates to emotions, to tell you, if you're wanting to start with energetic clearing, spiritual clearing, this is where you start. This is one of the most important foundations to have, because it is our connection point to the physical reality. Everything filters through and is perceived through the chakra systems. Like I said before, each chakra is expressing your energy through it outwards into the world around you, into the environment, and it's also taking energy in from the environment into itself. That's part of the vortex. My massage therapist works wonders. Yes, and that's why. That is one of the major reasons why massage is so great. So I hope you can see the foundational necessity for beginning with the chakras if you're talking about spiritual clearing of your energy. What that truly is shadow work. And I know that is a dirty word. Nobody wants to talk about shadow work. More succinctly, a lot of people want to talk about shadow work and nobody wants to do it. I'm talking to myself as much as everybody else here. Kicked yourself out liking the live. Well, I'm glad you're back. Alex, I agree with you 100%. Yeshua is very real. Okay, shadow work is paramount for this reason, because in shadow work, you are taking all of the things about yourself that make you uncomfortable, the things you are unconscious to, because they're so uncomfortable you don't want to confront them, so you sweep them under the rug. You hide them in the shadows away from the light of consciousness. Things like that traumatic experience that happened when you were 7 years old. But again, that is an energetic expression. Emotion is energy in motion. So whenever you try to hide those things from yourself, that is a part of yourself. It's not ever going to go away. And it will fester until you have no choice but to pay attention to it one way or another. And that can be much more uncomfortable than doing shadow work. If I need to go more in depth on what shadow work is for me, and examples of that, we can do that. But for me, shadow work truly is foundational when it comes to spiritual clearing of your energy field. And here's another reason why. I said that the chakras are spiraling vortexes of energy. There is a positive and a negative polarity. There's a push and a pull. Don't think in terms of good or bad when I say positive and negative. It's like the opposite ends of a battery or a magnet. There's a push and a pull, right? Each chakra is adding a layer to your energy field, to your force field that protects you from the energies of the environment around you, from anything from, let's say, a negative entity to a person that you might have a social interaction with, all sorts of things, including things like EMF radiation, right? All of it. We generate our own magnetic force field around our body, and each of the chakras adds a layer of protection to that. But if you have a blockage in your chakra, it creates a chink in your armor, a spot that is vulnerable and open to attack. And it doesn't have to be as nefarious as that. It could simply be that you are more vulnerable in the example that I gave, talking about parents splitting up when you're 7 years old and it resulting through an emotional blockage developing in your root chakra. With that example, that could manifest as all sorts of things. And with the chink in your armor in the root chakra, it could make it to where anything having to do with that vibrational frequency of stability, groundedness, foundation, those sorts of things, you have a soft spot there in your energy field. So things vibrating on that frequency are able to penetrate deeper into your energy body and wound you in ways that other things cannot. A perfect example of this for me is an experience that I learned the hard way. Have you ever heard the saying or noticed that those that you love the most have the ability to cause you the most pain? It should not go there, right? But in principle, the more you love a person, the more they have the ability to hurt you. The reason why that is the heart chakra, which is the primary engine for our force field, by the way. It generates a fairly powerful electromagnetic field around the body. The only way you can truly connect deeply on an emotional, energetic level, at the soul level with another person, is by creating an opening in your aura through the heart chakra. You create a little hole there for that specific person. And again, it's based on frequency. Every person has their own unique, specific frequency. It is unique to you, your frequency is. Nobody else has that frequency. It's like a radio receiver. There's 10,000 different stations all blaring information at this very moment. But if you turn on the radio, you don't hear all of those at the same time. You hear the one station you're tuned into. Well, your heart tunes into, your heart chakra will tune into the specific vibrational frequency of that person that you're forming that bond and connection with, and their energy will be like a key to that opening in your aura, in your protective field, to let them in to your heart chakra. That makes you more vulnerable for that person. They have the ability to wound you in ways that no other has the ability to for that reason. Hello, Arlena. How are you? Thoughts on Scientology or Ron Hubbard? That's really amusing. That just came up for me the other night. Don't let me forget about that, Brock. I want to finish out this topic, but please don't let me forget about that. Okay, so this is a huge, huge topic. There is no possible way I can cover all of the ground there is to cover when you're talking about spiritual clearing. But I started with the chakras because it is foundational. It is the foundation on which everything else is built. So if you can start there, it will work wonders. The more that you practice shadow work at earnest, the more you clear those blockages, the more the energy will flow up the Sushumna through each chakra vortex. Each one will be strengthened. Your energy field will be strengthened. You will raise your frequency vibration naturally. You will vibrate at a higher level, so you will naturally repel more and more. That process, which is kickstarted by shadow work, will have a cascading effect to where you naturally will clear your energy body through that process. There's a million other things we could talk about on that topic, but I think that is the most important. So before I move on, let me know if there's anything else there that we need to cover, or if there's any pointed questions that you have about spiritual clearing that you want to talk about. Brock, I want to talk a little bit about that and why that's so powerful. Brock says, I call a good massage an exorcism. It changes everything. There is a lot of truth to that for a lot of reasons. Did you know that we have, I'm trying to think of how I want to start this conversation, because this can be a big one too. We have a massive network within our body that is twice as extent as the circulatory system in the lymphatic system. Have you heard of that? Are you familiar with the lymphatic system? How to start shadow clearing. Okay, I'll cover that too. I told them at work, they practically ran away. That's great. So your lymphatic system is basically like, I don't want to say that. That sounds terrible. I was going to say sewer, but that just has a really negative connotation. It sounds terrible. But it is primarily responsible for removal of toxins throughout the body. We don't really fully understand the filtration system. That sounds a whole lot better. We have lymph nodes all around the body. We have a very extensive lymphatic system. And unlike the circulatory system, it doesn't have a pump. The heart pumps the blood back and forth all around your body, circulating it. You don't have a pump in your lymphatic system. Your entire body is the pump. We used to, historically, be far more physically active than we are now, so it did not used to be as much of a problem. Not only that, but we were not exposed to 1,000th of the environmental toxins that we are today. So we're bombarded with all of this garbage, and at the same time, we largely, as a collective, lead pretty sedentary lives where we sit a lot. We're not the most physically active, and by we, please don't take any offense to that. I mean as a society, as a general. We're not getting nearly as much physical activity as what we used to. Maybe the bumpy wagons helped. It probably didn't hurt. But anyway, it is through moving the body that the lymphatic system circulates, and there is an energetic component to the lymphatic system that science has yet to recognize in the West. But again, it is a lot like our filtration system. And getting a massage can be one of the best things for your lymphatic system. No, I'm not calling you out, Brock. I'm calling myself out here. as with all of these things that I'm telling you guys about, I'm speaking to myself as much as anybody else. I am just as guilty, if not more guilty, than the next person. So, where was I? The other reason why massage can be huge is because the subconscious mind, which again is the largest portion of our persona, it's not our waking consciousness that we know so well. That's like the 10% sticking above the surface of the water. The rest of it is all stored in the body. That is the subconsciousness. And energy is stored all throughout the body. Things like emotional traumas. And they, by virtue of energetic correspondence, what frequency they resonate with depends on where they are stored and how they are stored. A massage can be very stimulating to helping to free trapped energy. And one of the main reasons why, if you ever get a really good massage therapist and they give you a good massage, they tell you, the first thing they tell you is make sure to drink plenty of water. And that's why, because they've stimulated your lymphatic system, and part of the component of that is there's a stirring of stagnant energy, and your filtration system is going to be working overtime. So you need plenty of good quality water to help out that process. I know you're just messing with me. I've never specifically had one just for the lymphatic system either, Brock, but I have been very curious about it. Yeah, definitely, Anna. Definitely. Okay. So if there's no more... No, wait, there was one more. Somebody asked how to get started on the shadow work. Oh, Morgan, I missed your comment. Also researching the toroidal field, especially images. Can you show how it all comes together with chakras? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It is so intricate and complex the way all of the little pieces fall together into place. It's amazing. Okay, so Daisy asks how to begin with shadow clearing. There is a little bit of a necessity for a demystification of shadow work. I feel that in the spiritual community as a whole, a lot of people talk about doing shadow work and the importance of doing it, but not too many people talk about the meat and potatoes of it. What does that mean? What is shadow work? How do we do it? Essentially, in a nutshell, shadow work is calling the things of our shadow into the light of consciousness, making the unconscious conscious. So, what is an example of that? What do I mean by that? Anything about yourself you don't like. Anything about yourself that makes you uncomfortable. Maybe it's a tic. Maybe it is a personality trait. Maybe it's a traumatic experience. Any of those things, all of that and much more make up our shadow. It is the things about ourselves that we are uncomfortable with, and so we hide it in the darkness, away from the light of our consciousness. We make it unconscious. Shadow work is the exact opposite of that. We pull the things from the subconscious that are hidden from us into the light of consciousness so that they can be dealt with appropriately. For me, on my journey, the most important step of all when it comes to shadow work is setting the intention. Intention is key because we're talking about addressing things that we don't know, right? How do you address that which you do not know? That's a difficult thing to do. So it is important to set the intention with yourself verbally. Speak it, write it down, every which way that you can, that you are setting out on a journey to clear your shadow, and ask for help. You are signaling very powerfully to yourself, to the universe, to your higher self, and your subconscious mind that you are ready to bring those things to the light. And again, everything is energy. Everything. So whenever you make that declaration, you are vibrating your energy with that thought is sending out into the universe. You're vibrating in alignment with bringing those things to the light. So don't overlook that step. It's vital. Absolutely vital. And then inevitably, things will become revealed to you about yourself. But do not take this lightly, because many of these things are painful. Many of these things are uncomfortable, and we have hidden them for a reason. They are not... This is not a comfortable, easy process. You have to truly look at yourself in the mirror for the first time. That's in essence what shadow work really is seeing the aspects of self that you don't want to acknowledge. And that can look like, man, I really come off as kind of condescending, or whatever it is. It's different for each and every one of us. But that is the bulk of the process, is simply setting the intention, bringing those things into light, and acknowledging them. You have to own that. That is a critical step in the process, is whenever you are confronted with a truth, an artifact of self from the shadow, you will feel the pull to kind of brush that off, brush it aside, or dismiss it. That's what got it in the shadow in the first place. So resist that urge. No matter how uncomfortable it is important that you face it head on and you own it. You own it for what it is. And whenever you do that, you call it back into yourself. And then that energy can be expressed appropriately and transformed. And each time you do that, you're calling back a little piece of yourself, and you will get stronger each and every time that you do this. I hope that answered your question and makes sense. I'm going to try to get caught up on my comments real quick. Ever wonder why I push water? Massage therapist was my dream job. Okay. I would love to see you do that, Brock. It's never too late. Don't ever give up on your dreams. I know that is cliche, but that is your truth. That is your truth. That is moving into alignment with your truth. That is living authentically. If it is something that is near and dear to you, if it was your dream job, if you resonated with that, if it gives you energy to do those things, then by doing those things and pursuing it, you're moving into alignment with your inner truth, authenticity, highest possible vibration. So, as to whether or not there's a blockage for the wrist, we have, and I wish I had the image here to call it up, in the East, in the much older systems, not in Western society, whenever I talk about yoga, in the East, the origins of yoga, they have spent thousands of years mapping the entire energy system, and they've got very intricate and detailed maps of all of the energy meridians, all of the connection points from each chakra through the nervous system, through the nerve ganglia, and even through each of the glandular systems, and how they all interconnect. And that's why we have pressure points, right? Have you seen or heard about martial artists where they study pressure points and they can literally block the flow of energy through your body and temporarily paralyze you just by applying a little bit of pressure and energy at certain points in a specified interval of time? That's not woo-woo. That's just science that's not understood in the West. They are blocking the flow of your energy, of your chi, by doing that. So it is entirely possible just about anywhere throughout the body to have these sorts of blockages. And they're very similar to a blockage within the chakra. But you also have minor chakras, not just the major ones. And there are minor chakras, and I use that term very loosely when I say minor, in the palm of our hands that are used for healing. And I have a video specifically on those if you're interested. Trying to get caught back up with you guys. I got too far behind. How's it going, John? Connection's glitching. Let me clear the energy a little bit. If you guys do start having trouble with the live, please don't give up on me. Try leaving and coming back immediately. That usually clears things up for you. But I am going to burn a little sage, clear the energy just a little bit. You're most welcome, Daisy. I hope that helped you. Now, I got to try to remember what the other topic was I was supposed to get to. You're most welcome, Temple Time. I'm doing it on the side and a parallel job. Well, congrats on that, Brock. I'm proud of you. I started at childhood working on shadow work up to now. The body image grids. Spock. Exactly. That's what that is. It's not just sci-fi. That's the funny thing about a lot of sci-fi is there is origins in or a basis in truth, like Star Wars, like the movie Dune, like The Matrix. All of those have a whole lot of truth to them, and they are based off of philosophical concepts and spiritual truths. Hello, Amy. You're most welcome, Jody. You guys are great. It froze as soon as I said clear energy. How funny. Imposter syndrome. Okay, thank you, Morgan. And then Ron Hubbard and Scientology. Okay, so Morgan, I hope that this doesn't upset you, but I want to take Brock's topic first because it will definitely be faster for me because I don't have 30 plus years of experience dealing with L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. I've got a little bit of information on it and it's interesting, but it's a lot shorter than talking about anxiety. That is something I'm passionate about. It's something I've dealt with most of my life, and so that conversation will take a little bit more time. Thank you for your understanding. I've got Brittany riled up now. She just wants to join in the conversation. Okay. So it really intrigues me that you brought that up, Brock. I think it was the day before yesterday. It was either that or last night. I can't remember exactly. My days are running together. But I just got done working. I was completely wiped out and exhausted, but I wasn't quite ready to go to sleep. So I flipped on the TV and was looking for a documentary to watch. And I seen a documentary, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. I'm sure I won't be able to. It was a History Channel documentary, and it was dealing with the pyramids and ancient sites around the world and the discovery or rediscovery of an ancient map that points to possible or probable futures on this map having to do with a cyclical disaster. Many of you guys who are familiar with my content would know why I would be very interested in that, right? So I started watching this documentary, and it's got this really long-winded introduction, where it's just showing little sites around the world and playing some basic classical music, and I swear it was like 10 minutes long. And so I kind of drifted off a little bit. No, I didn't go to sleep, but my consciousness strayed, right? I lost, I was no longer on the frequency of, interacting with this show. I was doing my own thing. Thank you, Brock, and thank you whoever pinned that. I appreciate you. So anyway, I'm sitting here during this long-winded introduction. Sounds familiar. And I start drifting off. And for some reason, Aleister Crowley popped into my head. I was thinking about, I was actually visualizing my future and how I was going to expand my content and become so successful that I could do this full time, that I could finish my research on reincarnation and Christianity and the true teachings of Yeshua, and journey to all of these mystical ancient sites. And I've seen myself in the Great Pyramid, the Temple of Initiation, in the King's Chamber, and out of nowhere it popped into my head. I seen Aleister Crowley's face. And then I thought, well, maybe that would be kind of creepy, because some of you may or may not know this, that Aleister Crowley spent a lot of time in the Great Pyramid doing some really powerful magic rituals, harnessing the energy of the Great Pyramid. And some really powerful things happened while he was doing this. And I was snapped out of my daydream thinking about these things by the show starting. So I started paying attention, and then the very first opening scene, the first image it showed outside of the introduction, was Aleister Crowley's face. And it started talking about how Aleister Crowley had, summoned these entities, extra dimensional entities, using an ancient ritual that he found in an obscure text. He was very skilled in magical formula and evocation, and he found this manuscript, translated it, and successfully, according to his own writings and people who were there, and opening a portal to another dimensional awareness where an entity spoke to him by the name of Lamb. And he drew a picture, an image of this entity, and it looked very similar in a lot of ways to a gray, to an extraterrestrial. And then he talked to this entity for a very long time and refused to tell anybody about their conversations, at least outside of his inner circle. He didn't even write it down in his journal. It was so important, he would not even write it down. And then, I guess about 20 years later, two of his students, of Crowley's students, L. Ron Hubbard and Werner von Braun, decided to recreate his experiment in California, Southern California, and supposedly they were successful too, but they could not figure out how to close the portal. That was one of the things they were talking about on this documentary. And again, they didn't really share a whole lot of information with the extent of the conversations that they had, much less all of the things that was said and discussed with these beings from another dimension. But it has been theorized that they opened this portal to another dimension in the early 40s and then was unable to close it. But shortly after that, L. Ron Hubbard went on to start Scientology, and Wernher von Braun created NASA. Almost immediately after these conversations with these extra-dimensional beings that were potentially the Greys, but that's just a theory. That part's a little unknown. That's really the extent of my knowledge in those areas. Whenever you talk specifically about Scientology and Ron Hubbard, I think that it definitely has extra-dimensional beings as a root, as an origin. Maybe extraterrestrial, but from my understanding from the work that Aleister Crowley was doing, from the specific rituals in the manuscript, it would have been extra-dimensional as opposed to extraterrestrial. I hope that makes sense to you. I know that's not a whole lot of information, but it is very synchronistic that just happened to me. And then you just brought that up out of the blue, because that is something I've never talked about on here. And that's saying a lot, because we talk about everything in here, right? Oh, it was you who penned it. Thank you, Melanie. And yes, Braca, I love that song. It wasn't Sedona. It was, I can't remember the name of the town. It was in Southern California. I know that. Hubbard idolized Crowley. Yes, he was one of his primary students. Sounds very familiar, I think. Yeah. Timothy says fallen angels. I push buttons. Does make you think, for sure, either way. Definitely makes you think. Okay, so now what was the other topic? Morgan, it was your topic. Please remind me what. Anxiety. That's what we were going to talk about. Satan worshippers. I think that's a topic I don't want to go down that road, Timothy, tonight. Remind me if you're ever in here again, and we will go down that road. But I want to keep the energy upbeat and as positive as possible tonight. Okay, anxiety and imposter syndrome. Give me 1 second, guys. As I mentioned earlier, and many of you guys have heard this 100 times, and if you have, please bear with me. I think it is important and worth discussing, even if it's repetitive, because again, we all have anxiety from time to time. And unfortunately, we are not often taught what anxiety is, how it functions, how it works, and given the tools to properly handle it. It should be taught in schools. I don't know why it's not. I have a pretty good idea why it's not. But it really should be something that is taught in schools. And if not, it is definitely something that is worthy of teaching your children, if you have any. Because everyone at some point in their lives will have an anxious episode. And over a third will experience a prolonged anxiety disorder, which sounds nefarious, and there's a lot of negative connotations with that word, but it simply means disorder, something that is not in order. Anxiety is make-believe until you experience it. Exactly. That's one of the most frustrating things about anxiety, is there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about it. And one of the worst things you can tell a person that is dealing with anxiety is, it's all in your head. And unfortunately, even those in the medical profession will tell you that sometimes. And it is incredibly dismissive and just full-on not helpful whatsoever. I discovered that I had dealt with anxiety the majority of my life, if not my entire life. I did not know, and this is telling you a little bit of intimate details about myself, but about 14, 15 years ago, my anxiety started peaking, and it got to the point to where I was having panic attacks, full-blown panic attacks every single day, multiple times a day, every day. And it got to the point I could not function normally in day-to-day life. So I said, something has to be done about this. And I set out educating myself, learning everything I could on the topics of anxiety, the mind, psychology, panic disorder, all of these things. And I am a little embarrassed to admit to you guys that at that time and before that, I had no idea what anxiety was. I had heard the term thrown around before, but whenever I experienced my first panic attack and it was suggested that perhaps it was anxiety, I was offended. I was like, no, this is not anxiety, okay? I know what anxiety is. I was dying. The truth is, I had no idea what anxiety was. I didn't know that, I didn't understand at all what anxiety is, what causes it, that it's just, it is simply the way we think. It is a system of thought, is simply what anxiety is. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment. But I didn't understand any of these things. All I knew is I had very real symptoms. It got to the point to where one day I was at work, and I was asked, it doesn't really matter what I was doing, I guess, but it was a high stress, high tense environment, very fast paced, and it just got to me. The stress, the anxiety of all of it got to me. And the next thing I know, my heart was beating out of my chest about, 500 beats a minute, it felt like. It wasn't really that high, but it felt that way. And I couldn't catch my breath. And my throat felt like it was being squeezed, like I couldn't get a deep breath. My chest was really tight. I began hyperventilating. My whole body started shaking a little bit. And before I knew it, my entire vision went, and I experienced very powerfully tunnel vision. My vision was reduced to about the size of a $50. And I was about as close as a person can get to passing out without actually passing out as it gets. And that was the final straw for me. I decided to find out what the heck was going on. And so, without any further ado, without dragging this out anymore, let's just talk about what anxiety really is. Anxiety is thought. It is the result of the thoughts that we have in our mind, the way that we think about outside stimulus, the way we think about our environment. And it can be very, very difficult to get a handle on it at first, because the way our neurology works is that neurons that fire together wire together. So let's start all of the way back at the very beginning and follow it through the process of how anxiety develops and how it works. My sister and cousin both have horrible anxiety. Thank you, Jen, for sharing that, and please stick around, because I probably have some information and advice that will be helpful for you or anyone that you know or care about that has anxiety. The very first time we think a thought, not the very first thought you ever have, but the first time you think a new thought that's never been thought before, it is difficult for your brain because there's no framework there. It's like hacking and carving your way through a dense jungle with a machete, right? The very first person in line hacking their way through this jungle, they're breaking out in a sweat, they're hyperventilating, they're doing a lot of work to carve a path. Your brain is the same way with the first time you think a specific thought. But then, for all of the people behind, it's a little bit easier. With each person that walks down that path, it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier. It is the same way with your thoughts. Let's say that well, whatever it is, it don't matter. Let's just say the thought is, I don't want to stand up in front of people. What if I pass out? Just some random thought, right? Okay. The very first time that thought was processed by the hardware of your brain, it was very, very difficult because there was no framework. There was no blueprint. There was nothing there the first time that thought was thought. And so your brain carved this pathway. Every single time that you think that thought, it gets easier and easier and easier and faster. And to the point that it begins to become like an information superhighway. And it becomes so easy to think that thought that eventually it becomes automatic. And that's where anxiety really comes in. We have a portion of the brain called the reticular activating system. And it sounds far more complicated than what it really is. What the RAS is a filter, simply put. Our subconscious mind is taking in billions and billions of bits of information every single second of every day, whether you're awake or asleep. Everything from the temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, variations in the magnetic field, people, the clothing that they wear, the nuances of their body language, the proximity of you whenever they approach, the little tickle on the hair of the back of your neck whenever the breeze blows, or your heart pumping blood through the small vessels on your eardrum causing a pulsing sound. All of that and much, much more every single second. Your conscious mind does not have the capacity to process all of that information. So the RAS, the reticular activating system, steps in and it decides what's important and what's not. And what it filters through to your waking consciousness is a tiny, tiny fraction of the totality of all of this. It decides based on where you put your attention, what is and is not important. Now, this is a foundational key to understanding anxiety. So I hope that I'm being clear here. If I'm not, get my attention and let me spend a little bit more time with this. If you pay a little bit more attention to certain thoughts. Let's say you've had that thought of, public speaking makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to get up there. What if I do this and it makes me so nervous I pass out or something like that? Let's say you've been having thoughts like that for a couple of months. It's no longer a new thing. The neurons that fired have wired together and built a bridge, an information superhighway. So now those thoughts come freely and easily. They happen all of the time. Let's say you have that same thought because, let's say you're in college and you have to take Public Speaking 101. It's a requirement. At some point you're going to have to stand up in front of this audience and give a speech. So you start having these thoughts daily. What happens is your body, your reticular activating system says, well, you've been having these thoughts 100 times a day, every day, like clockwork, but you're not doing anything about it. So it must not be important. So what we're going to do is we're going to file that away. We'll filter it out. Those thoughts don't stop. They continue over and over and over. Thank you for the cheerleading, Brock. Those thoughts continue in the background on autopilot. I call them negative automatic thoughts. They happen whether you're aware of them or not until you put an end to them, which is why you don't have to be doing something that scares you to have anxiety. You can be sitting on a couch with your significant other, having some popcorn, watching a comedy, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you're really anxious and you have a full-blown panic attack. And you're like, what in the world? Where did that come from? Whatever it is for you. Sorry guys, I just seen the live was interrupted. Let me know if you can hear me before I continue. It's freezing up again. Can you guys hear me? Is it back? Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. So those thoughts continue on autopilot without you being aware of it because they've become automatic. And since you've not done anything about it, your reticular activating system has filtered it out of your conscious awareness to where you are no longer aware that it's happening. That's where the real trouble starts. What happens is you have a thought, which leads to a series of other thoughts. Let's say the first thought was, oh my gosh, this Friday, I have to give my speech before the class. There's 35 people in there. And then you follow that thought with, what if I get up there and I can't remember what I'm supposed to say? What if everybody's staring at me and judging me? What if they laugh? What if my voice starts shaking? What if? And those thoughts get a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse each time. And each one of those causes a biochemical response and a reaction within your body. It's not just in your head. Every single one of those thoughts releases a cocktail of hormones coursing through your bloodstream, and little by little, step by step, you work yourself up into an anxiety attack, because each one of those thoughts, it's a little bit worse, puts a little spurt of adrenaline into your bloodstream, a little squirt of cortisol, and a whole smorgasbord of other hormones and chemicals. And eventually you will get to a point to where there is so much hormones and imbalances coursing through your blood that it causes a physical response within your body. Your heart will begin to beat faster. You might begin to sweat. You might have a little bit of a tremor. It starts mildly at first, but then what happens is you become afraid of the reaction. You're no longer afraid of what if Friday I have to stand up and give the speech. Now you're worried that your heart is beating out of its chest and you can't seem to catch your breath. You get afraid of the fear. And then it doubles down on all of these hormones, on the adrenaline, on the cortisol, on all of these things. And before you know it, you're in a full-blown panic attack. Take every thought captive to the... I like that. Thank you, Timothy. Them work themselves into a tizzy for sure. But just know that is what causes anxiety. Is it biochemical? Yes. But those are effects. It's not the cause. The cause of any anxiety is our thoughts. How we think about things. The important thing is, once you know this, once you begin to pay attention to your thoughts, then you can begin to change them. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say you're in a public speaking class and you haven't ever had to stand up and give a speech, but it petrifies you. And you've noticed that you've been really anxious leading up to this, and you've had a full-blown panic attack at this point. So you research and you learn all of the things I just told you about anxiety, and you recognize that it is, first and foremost, it is a disordered way of thinking. So you start paying attention to the thoughts that are going on in your mind. You bring those to the light of consciousness, the things that you normally wouldn't notice. So you start paying attention to every single little thought that you have. And as soon as that thought pops up, that it's like, what if tomorrow, whenever I get up there, what if almost anything, any thought that begins with what if is usually a bad thought. So pay attention to that. You start catching those thoughts, and then you stop them dead in their tracks and replace it with a positive, affirmative thought. What if? Yes, what if I get up there and it goes amazing? What if I completely nail it and I get a standing ovation? Or if that seems too unrealistic to you and you don't think you'll buy it, then say, what if I get up there and I forget what I'm going to say? So what? Who cares? I'm a human being. Look how these other people are doing. They're not all perfect. No one's perfect. You got to coach yourself through that. Consciously choose what thoughts that you want to think. Instead of telling yourself 10,000 times a day, you're not enough. Who are you to stand up here and talk to these people about this? Who are you to give these people life advice? Who are you, 10,000 times a day, beating yourself down, kicking yourself while you're down even. Instead of that, how about you give yourself a little encouragement? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you were your own cheerleader? If 10,000 times a day you said, you are amazing. You deserve to have an audience like this. You deserve to be heard. You might just have something to say, Imagine if you'd done that 10,000 times a day. Do you think you would have anxiety anymore? I don't, because I know enough about anxiety and the way it works. But what you have to do is you have to pay enough attention to your thoughts that once you get into this pattern of having negative, self-depreciative thoughts or fearful thoughts, you stop them in their track. I like to visualize a stop sign in my mind, and I run my face into that stop sign. I imagine walking down the road not paying attention and then just BAM! Getting smacked by a stop sign. I see it concretely in my mind, almost to the point I can feel it smacking me in the nose. And it jolts me awake real quick, and then I pay attention. And then I change the thoughts. And I begin to talk myself through the situation in a positive, constructive way. And ever since I learned this trick, I've never had a single anxiety attack, much less a panic attack. I've learned how to stop that in its track, and I promise you, this works. It is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which, if you have anxiety, I strongly encourage you to look into. I try to do this with my depression. Depression is the same thing in many ways. It's different by energy, by vibration. And the problem with depression is the chemicals released in your body are different. It is a repressive energy. And the cocktail of chemicals that is dumped into your bloodstream with depressive thoughts represses your will. It represses your energy, your desire to do anything. That's why it feels so terrible. And one of the main things that is different about anxiety and depression is that in many ways, depression is the result of repressing self. Let's say that there's something that you want to do and you decide that you can't do it. You repress yourself. You repress your will to do that thing. Let's say you wanted to sign up to give a speech and for this spirituality conference based on your main topic of the chakras that you are in love with. You've studied it every which way from Sunday. You know it inside and out. You would love to talk about this. But let's say you're with a significant other that's really uncomfortable with that, and they're afraid that you'll get some attention. And so they are completely opposed to it, and they tell you, no, I don't want you to do this. If you give in to that, and you say, well, if you don't want me to, then I'm not going to do it, you are repressing yourself. And that leads to depressive thoughts. It doesn't have to be that. It can be tiny little things, but they accumulate over and over and over again, where you're repressing yourself. You're pushing yourself down. And it manifests completely different than anxiety, but at its core, it is the same, because it is a disordered way of thinking. It is the way that we think about things that causes that chemical response, because you feel repressed. Does that make sense? If you did not feel repressed, if you, let's say that you love your significant other so much, you would do anything to prevent them from feeling uncomfortable, to the point that you're happy to have something that you could do that would make them happy, then you're not probably going to feel repressed. You might even feel joyous that you've done something to make them feel a little bit better. So it's really in the way you think about things that causes the physical response within the body that releases this cocktail of hormones and chemicals. I know you can't see, but I'm nodding my head. I love it, Jen. You have to be your own cheerleader, 100%. That's one of the most important things that we can learn. Hello, Kim. How are you? I'm trying to see if I'm missing any comments here. Usually too stressed to hear my thoughts. That bittersweet abstract art. I love abstract art. I love the name, by the way. I've dealt with that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Abstract art. I love the name, by the way. I've dealt with that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Many different types of anxiety. Hopefully the live is back. I just seen it glitched on me. There are many different types of anxiety. The core root cause is the same for all of them. But with the example I've been talking about with public speaking, you know why you're anxious. It's public speaking. You know that you will have to get up in front of 100 people in the spotlight on the stage and give a talk. And you know that makes you fearful. So it's no mystery of why you feel anxious, right? At least not if you're paying attention. But with generalized anxiety, you have no clue. There's nothing going on in your life that's causing anxiety. You're not aware of any thoughts that could lead to an anxious feeling. You're not getting ready to stand up on a stage and give a speech. Like I said before, you might be sitting down next to your spouse holding hands watching a romance or a comedy, and suddenly your heart's beating out of your chest, you can't breathe, and you feel like you're going to pass out. That's a real struggle because you have no idea where it's coming from. So it's harder to face it. It's harder to dissect it and figure it out. But the reason that we get generalized anxiety is because we have thought a certain pattern of thought for so long without doing anything about it that our reticular activating system has filtered it out of our waking conscious mind. So we're no longer aware of the thoughts that we're having. That's what most likely is going on with you, Bittersweet. It was in my own personal experience. Because they're so repetitive over and over and over again. The average person has 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000. I challenge you to try to sit down one day and write out 60,000 thoughts. That is a lot of thoughts. We are usually not able to be aware of that many thoughts at once. Our conscious mind has just got too much going on. It can't process that. So the RAS has to decide which thoughts are important for you to be aware of and which ones are not. And since you've thought that same thought 3,000 times today, and every day for the last 6 months, and nothing's come of it, it must not be important. So it continues on in the background automatically, but you don't know it's happening. And that can really be a challenge. Okay, let me get caught back up on what no, it's happening. And that can really be a challenge. Okay, let me get caught back up on my comments real quick. Hello, happy mama. Good to see you. Can come out of nowhere for no reason. If I mess up, and I will, it will at least make some laugh. Exactly. You think speaking online is easier than on stage, but it's not. It depends on what you tell your than on stage, but it's not. It depends on what you tell your. Barely muster staying live for 4 or 5 minutes. And I was so nervous, so anxious. I'm sure it was horrible. I'm sure it was just quite the sight to behold. But quite the sight to behold. But here's another thing that I've noticed. The majority of that is all in your head. Very, very rarely is your anxiety strong enough that other people are able to pick up on it and perceive it. Unless it is somebody like myself who is an especially sensitive person to other people's energies. An empath, as an example, will be aware that you are anxious. The majority of your audience will have absolutely no idea. They're far too wrapped up in their self, what's going on around them, their own thoughts about what you're saying, their own experience, to pay attention to how you might be feeling or coming across. That's just the truth of it. Most people absolutely have no idea. And here's the thing. Even if they did, so what? So what if they think that you're anxious, or they know, oh my God, they know I'm anxious. So show me a person that has never been anxious, and I will show you a pile of horseshit. Please forgive my French. That's the rub there. That's the truth. Everybody at some point has been anxious or will be anxious. And so what? We're humans. It's part of the human condition. And I know that doesn't help you in the moment whenever you're getting ready to have to stand up and give a speech, right? Trust me, I've been there. But one other aspect of overcoming anxiety that I did not talk about yet that we really need to cover is, in psychology, it's what's referred to as exposure therapy. And you're not going to like this. Exposure therapy is basically the concept of facing your fears. Whatever it is that you are afraid of, you face it. It's important that you don't do that until you have the necessary tools in your toolbox. Things like we were just discussing. How to catch yourself with that internal monologue and stop the negative thoughts in their track. As you're standing up, let's say you've decided you're going to go live. That night, you're gonna probably lose a little bit of sleep if you're anything like me. You'll be tossing and turning, laying there thinking about it, thinking it to death, imagining all of the possible ways it could possibly go wrong and how terrible it could be. All of those things. That right there is when you're supposed to go already start. You're supposed to throw up the stop sign and say, nope, we're not doing that. Coach yourself through it. You know, what if I'm anxious and nobody can tell? What if I go up there and I face my fear? So what if I'm shaky? So what, if I feel nervous and I get a little sweaty? So what? Nobody will be able to tell. What if I go up there and face my fears And then I'm no longer holding myself back and I can pursue my dreams. What if I get so good at doing this it no longer makes me anxious at all? What if I'm amazing at it? You got to tell yourself those things and talk yourself through it. And then when the time comes for you to actually go live, coach yourself through it. Because even though you're speaking, you're still going to have those thoughts in the back of your mind until you get going. And one of the best bits of advice I can possibly give you on public speaking is speak on something you're passionate about. Notice I don't get up here and talk about baseball. I don't get up here and talk about whatever it is that I'm not passionate about, right? I talk about everything that I'm deeply passionate about, and I get lost in it. I am far too engaged and passionate during my lives to stop and think about how I'm being perceived. Do I look like a goober? Can people tell that I'm nervous? All of those things. Those thoughts don't even have a chance whenever I'm live, because I am so here in the present moment, in passionate energy, vibrating at the frequency of the things that fill me full of life. So I'm far too busy to pay attention to those anxious thoughts. And that's why it doesn't really bug me. Not only that, but every time you do that which makes you anxious, you take its power. The very first time you do it, you're going to be most likely anxious as all get out. But if you do it anyway, regardless of how anxious you feel, don't give in, don't stop. Do it anyway. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how anxious you get, no matter how much your voice cracks or shakes, or no matter how many times you mess up, do it anyway. Who cares? Just do it. And then whenever it's done, freak out on yourself. Like, oh my God, you did it. I can't believe you did it. Every single time you do it from then on, it will be easier than that time. It will get easier and easier and easier each time you do it. And every single time you do that which you are afraid of, you are pulling back your energy that you had given to that fear and saying, no, this is mine. I'm taking this part of my life back. Now, the opposite of that, by the way, is when you give in to those fears and you let them win. Let's say interacting in public makes you nervous, and something bad happens when you're at a grocery store once, and it further cements that fear. So that fear grows. Exactly. It grows, and then you don't even want to leave your house anymore. So let's say there's something that you need to do. You need to go get some groceries, but the idea terrifies you. And so you get all worked up with your thoughts, listening to this internal monologue, and you decide, I'm not going to go. I'll do it tomorrow or whatever. You might lie to yourself a little bit, but what's happened is you've given into that fear. So you've given your energy to a fearful thought, and that part of yourself is held captive. And each time that happens, your world gets a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller, until eventually you couldn't possibly, much less go shopping or go on vacation, God forbid, something like that, much less go shopping or go on vacation, God forbid, something like that, And literally, you are giving your energy to a thing. That's how demons are created. And that is a whole nother topic, and I know we don't have time for that right now. And please don't be afraid of what I'm saying right now. It's not nearly as dark and nefarious as what it sounds like. Please don't be afraid of what I'm saying right now. It's not nearly as dark and nefarious as what it sounds like. But I do believe we create our own demons, because emotion is energy in motion. And whenever you experience an energetic, but I do believe we create our own demons, because emotion is energy in motion. And whenever you experience an energetic, how those things come to life. Man, my live just is really glitchy tonight. I'm sorry, guys. With social anxiety, I got to the glitchy tonight. I'm sorry, guys. With social anxiety, I got to the point where I could barely leave my house. Agoraphobic. Wasted. I won't say I wasted, but I spent decades of my life living in those states, in a fearful, anxious state. But I'm grateful for it today, and I never thought I would say that. I am truly grateful that I spent decades of my life anxious. It's really a superpower. And I know that that sounds crazy, but there are key characteristics that come with an anxious mentality. First of all, and perhaps most importantly, you become hyper vigilant, very, very self-aware, aware of how your actions affect everyone else around you, how you navigate around the environment, where your personal space is, how your actions affect everyone else around you. Like when you're walking down a grocery store aisle and you're stopping and you're looking to figure out which tea you want. If you're an anxious person, you're probably hypersensitive to the fact that you're taking your sweet time, and you might be causing the person behind you to become impatient. Maybe you're blocking their path and they can't get to what they're looking for. People that are not geared that way, they are oblivious. They have no sense of their immediate environment in that regard. So that state of hypervigilance, it's a superpower, because you are acutely aware of the environment around you, of emotional cues, of body language, of other people's energy, and how your actions affect the environment around you. And you can use that to your advantage, by the way. As above, so below. I'm always prepared. So painfully aware. I get it. Trust me, Morgan, I get it. What they might be causing people to feel exactly. But here's the thing that I have discovered on my path with anxiety and spirituality in general. It truly takes a special person to develop a full-blown anxiety disorder. Not just have an anxious period or anxious moments, because again, everybody goes through that at some point. But it takes a person with a big heart, a person, a very loving, very caring, sweet person, to develop that level of anxiety, because for that very thing, because you are so acutely aware of how you are impacting the world around you. You're more worried about how your actions are affecting other people than how they are affecting you. You're more worried about how your indecision on picking the tea in the grocery store aisle might make this guy behind you take an extra 3 seconds to get his groceries and get out than you're more worried about that than selecting the right tea that you want, right? Not everybody is capable of that. It is a depth of empathy that not everyone shares. So, again, if you're here and you have that type of mindset and thinking, just know that it's because of the person that you are that is even possible, and that is not a bad thing. Once you can learn to overcome anxious thinking and anxiety disorders, it truly can become your superpower, because you understand people so much better. I am hypersensitive to other people's energy. I can read people like a book. That's not always a good thing for me, but I can. And not only that, but because I went through this for decades, to the point I have experienced every type of anxiety possible, intimately, and that I overcome these things on my own through education and research and trial and error, I can now teach other people. I can help people overcome these things for themselves. I can teach them the positive things about anxiety. And if I can just help one person out of the depths of despair of an anxious mindset, then I have changed the world. Now tell me that's not a superpower. That is truly a beautiful thing. You just got me all excited to create some spiritual content. I hope you do, Morgan. I truly hope that you do. And I offer this to you and anybody else. If this is something that you struggle with and you feel like that you need some help, I am willing to help in any way that I possibly can with that. If that's just coaching you through that, if it's an ear, if it's you want to go live with another person because that might distract away from the attention a little bit, whatever that is, I would be honored to help with that for you and anyone else that would like to try to overcome those things. I would truly be honored to help. So if there's anything I can do, just let me know. I'm saving that one for my smile file too. Since we're on this topic, let's talk about that. You guys have probably heard me say smile file a few times. Tonight's been an exceptional live. What that is a literal file I have began keeping for all of the things that are positive and uplifting and make me smile. Artifacts to put on a shelf to show myself I am worthy. I deserve to do this. I am worthy of going live and sharing these things with people, because imposter syndrome. See, I messed up and it's not a big deal, right? We can all have a little laugh at my expense. It's fine. Imposter syndrome is an offshoot of anxiety. It is a different flavor, but it is anxiety nonetheless. It's caused by the exact same thing. Anyway, it's caused by the exact same thing. The way that we think, the patterns of thought. And it is linked to, most likely, our childhood in most cases with traumatic events, where somewhere down the line something happened and our reaction to the outside stimulus of our immediate environment was that we now understand that we're not worthy. Let me give you an example of that, a real life example, my example. Whenever I was really young, my parents split up and my dad left. I was at a very fragile age in my development, and I had a very close bond and connection with my dad. And so whenever he left, my young developing mind did not understand that my parents were not getting along and that it was in their best interest, and even truthfully my own best interest, for them to part ways and go their own path. I was not capable of that level of understanding. What I understood is that Dad left me, not my mom, not our house, but left me. And the reason for that, obviously, the only thing that could make sense was that I was not worthy of my dad's love. I was not worthy of his attention. That was the conclusion that my young mind came to. And so I grew up thinking I was not worthy. I was not worthy of love. And truth be told, being a little vulnerable with you guys, this is something I still struggle with. And this is part of my shadow work and healing journey that I'm working through. I've come a long way, but this still affects me to this day. And one of the possible ways that could develop is into imposter syndrome, where you feel like, who are you to be giving spiritual advice? Who are you to be trying to teach people how to overcome anxiety? Because I learned at a very young age that my dad left because of me, for some reason, right? Because of my personal defects, because I was not lovable. I did not deserve all of these things. And so now I think I don't deserve to stand up before you guys and talk about spirituality or share my experience with you. And that becomes imposter syndrome, where you have this little voice in the back of your mind constantly telling you, you don't know what you're talking about. What if they all find out you're fake? What if they all find out you don't know what you're talking about? You're just some guy, you're just a stranger on the internet. You're not, a psychologist. You're not some spiritual guru. Who are you to be doing these things? But that voice is a liar. That voice is a liar. And it can be handled the exact same way as the other anxious thoughts. You just have to carefully choose which of those wolves you're going to feed, and stop feeding that wolf, right? Feed the one that's going to tell you all of the positive things about how wonderful you are, and about, of course, you have more experience dealing with anxiety than most therapists who have never experienced anxiety in their life. Sure, they've got a piece of paper with their name on it. Sure, they've seen some textbook cases, and they've, so have you. You studied psychology in college. But more importantly, you've dealt with it for over 3 decades. And you've helped dozens of people overcome it yourself. So you have every right to be standing up here sharing and talking about your experience, right? You have to do those things, or else then the negative voice wins. And then you wind up believing those things about yourself, believing that you're not worthy. And I'm here to tell you, you are worthy. You are enough. The world needs your voice. It needs to hear what you have to say. You are called to do that for a reason. Okay, now let me see what I missed, because I've been rambling for too long. You're most welcome, Morgan. I hope that helps you. I find that first-hand experience becomes the best teacher for others. That is my experience as well. Thank you, The Missing Link. I appreciate that. Exactly. Everyone has something to teach, and everyone has something to learn. You guys probably get sick and tired of me saying this, but it is the truth. It is my truth. And I firmly believe that none of us have all of the answers. None of us has all of the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience. None of us, not a single individual human being on this planet has all of it. We are given our own truth. We are given our own knowledge and experience. And it is like our specific piece of the puzzle. Our vibration is a piece of the puzzle. What we have inside of us. But we can't snap them together and see the big picture unless we are willing to bring forth what is within us and share it with the world. And that is the primary objective of the soul group here. That's why it is so important to me. The older I get, the less I know. That is a good thing, though. That is a good thing. Oh, thank you, Benita. That's very kind. Am I blocked? Are you talking to me, Brock? I seen you mention something earlier about immediately blocked or already blocked. That's what you said. I don't know what you're talking about. Did you do something to get blocked? I'm just kidding. No, I'm really lost. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're not blocked. I can see you. I can see your comment. It's so awesome to come together with others and bond on this level. For sure. Thank you, Jody. You guys are very kind. And I want to let you guys know, as I close out this live, because I'm going to have to get off of here, that you guys being here is the most amazing blessing for me that I can possibly imagine. It just truly is a blessing for me, because what I am doing is my calling. I truly feel like the divine has given me this and told me, go share it with the world. This is what you're here for. You are called to do this. The divine has given me this and told me, go share it with the world. This is what you're here for. You are called to do this. And so, and told me, go share it with the world. This is what you're here for. You are called to do this. And so, kick you in the backside if you quit. Would you humor me? Thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much for reminding me, because I did already forget that. Okay, guys, I am going to have to close off this live, but before I do that, I encourage you to participate in a group silent prayer and meditation for any of our friends and family who need it. Melanie has been sick for a while, and she could definitely use some prayers and positive vibes sent her way. And also Morgan's nephew, was that correct? Did I remember that right? Nephew had an emergency surgery. Okay, thank you so much for that. Let me clear the energy real quick and take a brief second to get centered here, and then we shall get started. By the way, I don't want anybody to feel obligated that they need to or have to participate in this. You are free to do as you will, either way. But the only thing that I ask in this is that you make sure and set the intention that the energy that is sent is only that which is in alignment with their best and highest good, with nothing nefarious attached to it. Okay. All right, everybody, I'm back. Thank you all so much Thank you for sticking around and for participating in this. For those who chose to participate, that was a very powerful prayer. I definitely felt spirit moving during that. It was a very powerful experience, and thank you for that. So one last time before we go, I want to thank each and every one of you for your time, your energy, and your presence, and for choosing to share that with us all here during this time. I will be live at probably 7 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you all then. I hope everyone has a fantastic night. Thank you, Anne. That's so kind of you. Sorry, Katie. I went live early. I went live early because I had a really long, exhausting day, and I needed to get off of the live early so I'd have a little bit of time to rest. If anybody would like me to, I will download a copy of this live and upload it to the YouTube channel so that you can watch it. Thank you, Brock, and I will. But again, if at any time you miss a live, or you miss part of it, or if you just want to share it with somebody or something like that, you can message me and I would be happy to download that live and upload it to the YouTube channel. I don't mind doing that one bit. You could have a Boss beer with some trim and softener. Yeah, I'm kind of neglected it here lately. I've been a little too busy to do anything with it, but thank you for that. Lex, it is spiritual. I talk a lot about a lot of spirituality, and real briefly before I go, thank you, Anna, I appreciate that. I believe religion is different from spirituality in that religion is a system of control that tells us we need a mediator to act on our behalf and mediate between us and the divine. Spirituality is about freedom, not control, and it says that the divine is within us and we do not need a mediator to act on our behalf. So that's the difference between the two for me. So I want to thank you all for being here. Hopefully I'll get to see you again tomorrow. I love each and every one of you guys, and I hope you all have a fantastic night. I'll see you soon.